With the WINN FM News, I am Kevin Brown. Our top stories: back to school savings, discount VAT days, and 0% VAT on school supplies announced. Ministry of Climate Action consultant provides insight into Community Climate Adaptation Fund, empowering local action. U.S. Department of Justice doubles reward for Venezuelan president's apprehension, $50 million. St. Lucia advances HIV prevention, prep training for healthcare professionals. Internationally, Ukraine will not give up land, Zelensky says, as Trump plans to meet Putin. Now, the details. The government of St. Kitts and Nevis has announced tax relief measures for the upcoming back-to-school season with discounted VAT days. The popular discounted VAT rate days are scheduled for Friday, August 15th and Saturday, August 16th, 2025. During these 2 days, the value-added tax on eligible goods will be reduced from the standard 17% to a significantly lower 5%. This offers a substantial opportunity for families to save on various purchases just in time for the new academic year. The Inland Revenue Department, IRD, emphasized that the reduced 5% VAT applies to tangible goods that are in stock and issued or delivered on the VAT day to qualify. Pre-orders and items not available for immediate delivery will not be eligible. Certain items are excluded from the VAT reduction to ensure public safety and regulatory compliance. These include guns and ammunition, cigarettes and tobacco products, alcoholic beverages such as wine, brandy, vodka, rum, beer, Guinness, Carib, and Smirnoff Ice, and vehicles. Adding to the relief, from July 1st to September 30th, 2025, specific school supplies will benefit from 0% discounted VAT rate. This extended tax break aims to provide families with extra budgetary room as they prepare for the new school year. The comprehensive list of school supplies eligible for 0% of VAT includes exercise books, textbooks, geometry sets, rulers, T-squares, school uniforms, school bags, pens, pencils, crayons, markers, highlighters, erasers, pencil sharpeners, glue sticks, dictionaries, folder leaf, graph paper, calculators, lunchboxes, book binders, and plastic book covers, amongst others. Businesses interested in participating in the discounted VAT rate days must upload their application form at www.sknird.com or visit the Inland Revenue Department offices in Bastia or Charlestown. Completed forms are to be submitted by 4 p.m. on Monday, August 11th, 2025. Approved businesses will be published on the IRD's website on or before August 15th, 2025 and must submit their VAT Day sales report by September 1, 2025. The concession sales schedule for businesses selling school supplies at the 0% VAT rate should be submitted with the VAT return for the relevant tax period. The upcoming VAT-reduced days follow the temporary VAT reduction from 17% to 13% implemented for the first 6 months of 2025, which the Inland Revenue Department noted has had a positive impact on commercial activity and consumer sentiment. In a tangible stride toward climate action, St. Kitts and Nevis, in partnership with the Global Center for Climate Mobility, launched the Community's Climate Adaptation Facility (CCAF) funding. This initiative aims to bridge the gap in climate finance, reaching local levels, empowering communities directly to address urgent climate-related challenges. Sharon Rattan, an embedded consultant in the Ministry of Environment, Climate Action and Constituency Empowerment, appeared on WINN FM's Island Tea on August 8, 2025, to speak about the CCAF funding opportunity for people of the Federation.
There is this notion that, there's a lot of grant funding outside that we can access, but we are not doing it. And I think one of the things we don't factor into that position is that there is very often a criteria for qualifications. Yes, and there are many international institutions that have a very stringent criteria.
She further elaborated on the accessibility of the CCAF fund.
However, this facility called the CCAF, that is the Community Climate Adaptation Facility, let me repeat, the Community Climate Adaptation Facility, has come up with a stream of funds so that access can be easier for persons to do projects in their communities. Why is it easier? It's easier because you just have to be registered as a community group. You, you can be an NGO, a non-government organization, and also you do not have to be registered. You can form an informal network in your community, come up with a plan, and apply for the fund. So first off, I would want persons to understand that the ease of access is what makes this stream of revenue different. Let us compare it to another international financial institution like the Green Climate Fund. You have a more stringent criteria. So first off the bat, I would like persons to know that.
Eligible applicants include registered or unregistered community groups, informal networks, cooperatives, and NGOs working directly within communities. When asked about the importance of this initiative for the nation, Ratan highlighted the increasing severity of climate impacts.
It is very important, and not just our country, the whole region, because I'm certain persons have heard the term climate change, sustainability. They've been hearing about climate resilience, adaptation, and mitigation. It is no... But let me put it this way, we are living and experiencing stronger hurricanes. I can give an example of when I was growing up. Hurricane David was in 1980.
Yeah.
And we thought that was strong. Right? It was just a mere 75-mile-per-hour hurricane. But look at what whisked through the Caribbean with a speed last year. Beryl, a Category 5. You know, at max speed, over 150 miles per hour winds. So we are certainly experiencing different climate events. Yes, we're accustomed to hurricanes, we're accustomed to a storm, but not at that strength.
Yeah.
And our activities for advancing our lives, improving our lives, technology, using more land that we would not have used, doing things on the coastline, reclaiming land, they have changed the climate, the way they've changed the climate.
St. Kitts and Nevis, a twin island nation, is highly vulnerable to the effects of climate change, including drought, rising sea levels, and more intense hurricanes. The nation's reliance on rainfall for potable water means that dwindling precipitation has led to regular water outages for 80% of St. Kitts residents. Sea levels in the region are projected to rise significantly.
We are experiencing intense heat. It was always hot. But how many of us played around in the sun and it didn't matter? But the heat, the earth is heating up. The use of fossil fuels for us to get diesel, to get electricity, is one of the major contributors to increasing emissions.
Yeah.
And getting this hole into the atmosphere, you're feeling the sun is hotter, temperatures are higher. And these things are affecting our daily lives because our experience is different, they're creating more damage, and we have to be aware of it. I know that personally say, climate change, what is that? But if you think about the changes in our lives, you don't need a big fancy definition of climate change. We're getting stronger hurricanes, flash floods, less rainfall in some areas. I can speak to the Bastia area and its environs because some areas in St. Kitts get rain every day on the northwestern side of the country. Northeastern side of the country, every time, Bastia will have a drought, but you drive in that area, it's always lush. So you're getting less rainfall. It affects agriculture. It affects our water supply. So we are living it. So we have to do a simple, for example, right now we are experiencing lots of water challenges in some areas, and it is not a simple fix. It is a fix that requires assessment. It is a fact that in the last 10 to 15 years, almost 20, Basti and its environs has received less rainfall, reduced rainfall. So less rain is going to our
Aquifers,
reservoirs, and some of our water comes from below. That is not coming as fast as it used to. And so therefore you have to look at the whole water infrastructure. So the two desalination plants, one, there's a smaller one at Keys, and one is about to be commissioned in a few weeks or months. That is one of the adaptation measures so that you can increase the supply of water.
Rattan noted that this is a positive development for water supply, especially given the ongoing challenges. Currently, demand for water is approximately 6.6 to 7 million gallons per day, resulting in a deficit of up to 1.4 million gallons per day. The CCAF grants offer funding of up to US $100,000 to support community-led projects that boost resilience, improve livelihoods, and safeguard ecosystems. Rattan outlined the types of projects that can be funded.
Yes, you have to have a criteria.
Yeah.
And the kind of projects you can have, water and sanitation improvements. They can fit under that topic. So if in your community you have a project for water, and not because there is an effort on the part of the government, to the government's avenue, the water department, to do desalination, it does not mean that you cannot solve a problem for water in your community.
Yeah.
You can engage in purchasing tanks, water tanks, and getting them set up. You can also, with that one project, because one of the things that they are inclined to support, not just that you have the product, but you can get persons trained to set up and maintain, because maintenance is equally important to having.
She continued, stressing the sustainability aspect.
It becomes sustainable, and it has that element. So that is one, water and sanitation, health projects, community health projects, because the heat, very often people, like when the first association was made with climate change and health, they said, how is that? But the health practitioners would tell you the intense heat affects people's blood pressure. In intense heat times, that's where you have more cases of blood pressure. And so you could have community health projects if you want to address that, if you want to target vulnerable groups of persons. You have some of the popular ones, the senior citizens, the older persons. You have the physically challenged groups, and you have children.
Yeah.
So you can tailor it to suit a particular audience.
Other eligible project areas include climate-resilient housing solutions.
And don't think it's too far-reaching. Resilience simply is making or creating a way so that if something happens, you can survive. You stretch and you come back to fit, you adapt.
She noted that building codes have been updated since Hurricane Hugo and George to be more stringent, but individual home improvements like strengthening windows, roofs, or adding a concrete roofed room can enhance resilience, environmental and coastal protection, while large-scale projects like buttressing the Bay Road with boulders would be challenging due to the need for expert assessment and high costs. Smaller, community-led initiatives in this area are encouraged. These efforts are crucial given that vulnerable marine and coastal ecosystems are being harmed by mangrove destruction, coral bleaching, and pollution. Livelihood support and skills training. These projects must be directly related to climate resilience, such as training individuals to set up and maintain water tanks. This approach creates a
multiplier effect, possibly a new source of income for somebody in the community.
Cultural heritage preservation. Rattan expressed enthusiasm for this category, emphasizing its connection to climate resilience.
Connected to climate resilience, because you want to, I like that one, because there are a few sites around that you can restore them to make sure that they are resilient. They're there.
Storms, yeah.
So the projects can come under any of these.
The CCAF emphasizes community leadership and inclusive approaches, prioritizing vulnerable groups such as women, children, persons with disabilities, and indigenous communities. Individuals, informal networks, registered community groups, and NGOs can apply for the funding. Ratan explained the straightforward application process.
No, it could be like an informal network can do it because you don't have to be registered. They have registered community groups, NGOs, but you can, a 4-person informal network in a community can identify a situation and address it.
Okay.
And for the proposal, there's a form, so you don't have to go and do your own formatting. There's a generic form
Oh, so it gives you some
provided
guidelines.
that gives you guidelines.
Yes, yeah.
Application forms and guidelines are available from the Department of Constituency Empowerment's office at Unit A2, Sands Complex, Bay Road, Bastille, or can be attained by emailing dce@gov.kn. The deadline for submitting completed applications is Friday, August 15th at 4 p.m. For further information, the ministry can be contacted at 467-1579 or 467-1545. In regional news, U.S. Department of Justice doubles reward for Venezuelan president's apprehension, $50 million. DBS St. Lucia reports.
The United States Department of Justice and State Department announced that it is doubling the reward for information leading to the arrest of Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro. Attorney General Pam Bondi took to the social media platform X to announce that the reward is now $50 million. The U.S. has accused Maduro of using foreign terrorist organizations like Sinaloa and Cartel of the Suns to bring deadly drugs into the U.S.
To date, the DEA has seized 30 tons of cocaine linked to Maduro and his associates, with nearly 7 tons linked to Maduro himself, which represents a primary source of income for the deadly cartels based in Venezuela and Mexico. Cocaine is often laced with fentanyl, resulting in the loss and destruction of countless American lives. The DOJ has seized over $700 million of Maduro-linked assets, including 2 private jets, 9 vehicles, and more.
The DBS News World spoke to Venezuelan Ambassador Life Escalona on the matter. She says that following the death of President Hugo Rafael Chavez in 2013, the United States continued to impose sanctions on Venezuela along with other countries. She claims the U.S.'s actions against Venezuela have to do with the country's oil reserves.
The only thing that we have to understand is Venezuela has the principal reserve of oil in the world. And this one is why the United States always will attack countries like us. And they are creating this kind of they try to create the kind of chaos. And in fact, in our region, in fact, in the world, in the entire world, when one country is very rich, we have the example of Libya, we have the example of Syria, we have many examples around the world.
She says Venezuela's production of oil and oil byproducts has put the country in a better place than it was 10 years ago. She asserts that countries must respect the sovereignty of each country. The Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela has not responded to the reward offered by the United States. For the DBS News World, Miriam Montoute reporting.
St. Lucia advances HIV prevention, PrEP training for healthcare professionals. DBS St. Lucia reports.
The Ministry of Health, Wellness and Elderly Affairs, in partnership with the Caribbean Vulnerable Communities, CVC, continues to advance HIV prevention in St. Lucia through capacity building and education. As part of sensitization efforts, the ministry hosted a workshop in the south and north of the island titled Sensitization of Healthcare Professionals and Private Sector Providers on the Use and Prescribing of Pre-Exposure Prophylaxis, PrEP. The session targeted district medical officers, family nurse practitioners, and private sector providers with the aim of strengthening their knowledge of PrEP, a highly effective medication used to prevent HIV transmission. Participants explored proper prescribing practices, client communication strategies, and key indications for PrEP use. Prevention of Mother-to-Child Transmission, PMTCT Coordinator Linda Berthier, highlighted the importance of empowering healthcare providers to confidently promote PrEP and support St. Lucia's broader HIV prevention goals.
Our main objective is to make sure that every healthcare worker, every healthcare practitioner, including our prescribing family nurse practitioners to feel empowered to be able to communicate the need for PrEP and why. And our overall objective is to get the 95, 95, 95, which is our sustainable goals for 2030. 95% of our population will get tested. They will know their status. 95% will be on treatment, and hopefully 95% will receive viral suppression. Now, if we have our HIV clients who are virally suppressed, that means they are not able to pass it on, transmit it. And if we have those who are high risk on PrEP, like our sex workers, our MSMs, men who have sex with men, vulnerable populations who are at the highest risk for getting HIV, if we protect them with PrEP, which is a daily medication or an event-based medication, then we have a plus on both ends. And then we would be able to rightfully eradicate HIV.
Dr. Cleophas Dove, HIV specialist and the workshop's lead facilitator, emphasized the need for training and advocacy at all levels of the healthcare system.
Well, I think it's very important for capacity development, also for training, so person to understand what HIV is, what prevention is, what drugs we use for prevention. It's also important as far as an advocacy tool because the providers need to take ownership and push the process forward, and they have to buy into it. So you have to provide them with the evidence so that they believe in the evidence and they believe that they can do it and it's something that's feasible and acceptable.
By strengthening the knowledge base of local healthcare providers, the ministry is reinforcing its commitment to inclusive and preventative healthcare, ensuring that St. Lucians have access to life-saving tools and services that promote healthier futures for all. From the Communications Unit, I am Onika McCoy reporting.
We now bring you these international reports.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that Ukraine could not violate its constitution on territorial issues and would not give their land to occupiers. Speaking earlier, he added that any solutions without Kyiv would be solutions against peace. This comes following the confirmation that US President Donald Trump and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin will be meeting next Friday in Alaska for their first face-to-face meeting since 2019. Speaking at the White House early on Friday, President Trump signalled that Russia and Ukraine were inching closer to signing a ceasefire deal. Well, Moscow has confirmed the meeting and said that they'd invited Donald Trump to visit Russia following the Alaska summit. President Putin has repeatedly said any discussions to end the war would have to include guarantees that the 4 parts of Ukraine occupied during the conflict would remain in Russian control. Aronade Mukherjee has more.
It's official. President Donald Trump and President Vladimir Putin will be meeting next week, their first in-person meeting since 2019. Confirming on social media, President Trump said the highly anticipated talks would take place on Friday, the 15th of August in Alaska. Interestingly, a meet on U.S. territory, positioning Mr. Trump as the host, holding talks on land that the U.S. purchased from Russia more than a century and a half ago. The announcement came after a meeting between Donald Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff and Vladimir Putin earlier this week, a conversation they described to be constructive. On Friday evening, President Trump indicated that talks will possibly include discussions over territory.
So we're looking at that, but we're actually looking to get some back and some swapping. It's complicated. It's actually nothing easy. It's very complicated, but we're going to get some back. We're going to get some switched. There'll be some swapping of territories to the betterment of both.
Kyiv would be watching anxiously. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has repeatedly made it clear that his country must be involved in any talks between Russia and the US. There are concerns that without his voice, Mr. Trump and Mr. Putin could agree to concessions that Kyiv may not want.
We are keeping up our talks with partners to find a common position for a solid peace for Ukraine, a real peace. And if everyone can see the opportunities and threats the same way, then we'll be able to get to a lasting peace. There is already a lot of support, and this support is based in the new circumstances when a deadline has been set for Russia for a ceasefire.
The Kremlin has confirmed the talks, calling Russia and the US close neighbors bordering each other. Donald Trump has prided himself in getting peace deals done around the world and has been impatient to see a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. But in the past, 3 rounds of talks between the two countries have failed to bring the war closer to an end. 3.5 years since Moscow's full invasion. Will this face-to-face summit lead to something different? Arunoday Mukherjee, BBC News, Washington.
Well, earlier I spoke to Alexander Murishka, who is chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Ukrainian Parliament.
It vividly brings back memories about Munich 1938, because we have very similar situation. First of all, the fate of the country, which is a victim of aggression, is being decided by 2 great powers without participation of this country. So it's a very dangerous situation for Ukraine. And Ukraine should also participate, the president of Ukraine should also participate in these negotiations. And the second big issue, which is reminiscent of Munich 1938, is related to the fact that the aggressor can be rewarded, not punished, for the crime of aggression and for occupation of the territories. It's extremely dangerous situation, not only for Ukraine, but also for international law and for the whole world.
So what about these talks? It is, of course, reports locally, or rather within the US at the moment via CBS, that in terms of territory, that could be swapped, as President Trump said. We're talking about Kherson, Zaporizhia, the Donbass. What's the country's feeling on that? What's the country's feeling on that?
Well, it's kind of difficult to understand what exactly President Trump means by the swap of the territories. But under Ukrainian constitution, it's absolutely impossible. We've been talking before about the need of ceasefire, unconditional ceasefire. But now we see that Mr. Trump's position is changing, but it's changing in the direction which is totally unacceptable for Ukraine from the perspective of our constitution.
Just to back up what you've just said there, Mr. Zelensky has reportedly said that Ukraine cannot violate the constitution on territory. Ukrainians will not give up their land to occupiers. So what hopes then of a positive outcome of these talks, Alexander?
Under the circumstances, what can be done for Mr. Trump just to follow through on his previous ideas and proposals, which means unconditional ceasefire. It might be a good start for any kind of negotiations with participation of Ukraine and with participation of our European allies, and including, of course, the UK.
What about compromises that are going to have to be made? Mr. Trump himself saying that it is very complicated. Just how complex is this? What compromises will Ukraine be willing to give to meet halfway across the table with Russia?
All kinds of compromises should not violate Ukrainian constitution and principles of international law, including the UN Charter. For example, for us to agree that we will return the occupied currently by Russia territories of Ukraine, not as much by using military hand as by using diplomatic and political means, is already a huge compromise.
So, Mr. Zelensky has been speaking weeks, days of frantic talks with European leaders. There are reports that the US are hoping to bring European leaders on board to back this plan. What sort of conversations can you share with us in terms of what those European leaders are thinking or feeling in terms of those talks coming up next week?
I don't know much about these conversations or phone talks which have been held recently because they're confidential. But from what I know, our European leaders are very concerned because they don't understand what's going on. They understand that Putin might be again playing President Trump, and Putin is demanding concessions which are aimed not as much to stop the war, to stop the fighting, but to dodge the sanctions from the United States.
Do you think that the US is being fair to Ukraine at the moment?
Well, we see that President Trump, in his own peculiar way, is trying to help Ukraine. But at the same time, we believe that he can and he should do more, and he should do it in such a way which will not violate our security, international law, and our constitution.
Now, international opposition continues to grow over Israel's decision to take over Gaza City, with the UN Security Council set to hold an emergency meeting on Sunday. The Secretary-General called the military escalation dangerous, saying that it risks many lives, including those of the remaining Israeli hostages. The foreign ministers of Britain, Italy, Germany, Australia and New Zealand issued a joint statement strongly rejecting Mr. Netanyahu's plan to expand the war in Gaza. They said it will aggravate the catastrophic humanitarian situation, endanger the lives of the hostages and further risk the mass displacement of civilians, adding any attempts at annexation or of settlement extension violate international law. Now, Israel has defended the decision to escalate its military expansion in Gaza, with the Defence Minister, Israel Katz, saying international partners who condemned Israel would not weaken their resolve to defeat Hamas. Now, currently, Israeli forces have control of around 75% of the territory. The new plan is to take over Gaza City, home to around 1 million Palestinians. A satellite picture which shows the density of the area 2 years ago. The image, though, taken recently, and it shows some parts completely destroyed in this war, while others remain largely intact. Now, Israel doesn't allow international journalists, including the BBC, into Gaza, so we have to rely on trusted freelancers within the territory. John Donnison, then, has sent this report from Jerusalem.
Homeless and hungry, Gazans woke up to the news today that this war is far from over, as if they needed telling. More Israeli airstrikes, and in Gaza City, the threat of another ground invasion. What is the point of a ground invasion? Nafez Ajour argues. There's nothing left that you haven't wiped out. There's nothing left, and there's no food either. With many already living in tents, under Benjamin Netanyahu's plan, up to 1 million people here will be ordered to flee for the umpteenth time.
Gaza City is not safe. The north is not safe. Where should we go? Do we throw ourselves into the sea?
For Gazans, the destruction and the suffering is endless. Just 50 miles away, but a world apart in Jerusalem, Israelis were stocking up for the weekend. Hundreds of thousands of troops will be needed to capture Gaza City, but the people we spoke to here said there was no choice.
What's the alternative? What should they do instead? Have we tried making deals? Yes. It's not doing anything. Has there still been attacks? Yes. Has there still been casualties on both sides? Yes. So it needs to be finished. That's it.
We need to finish now all the terror. If the name is Hamas, now we must, not need, we must now.
This decision by the Prime Minister is divisive. We found plenty of people here who back him, but polls show the majority of Israelis think the best way to get the remaining hostages home is ending the war and a ceasefire deal. So this decision is a gamble.
Again this weekend, there will be mass protests by hostage families and their supporters. Many argue that if their loved ones don't get out of Gaza alive, their Prime Minister will be partly to blame. John Donnison, BBC News, Jerusalem.
OK, let's speak to Joel Onyeke, who is Head of Operations in Gaza for Save the Children. Joel, hello, welcome to the programme. First off, what's your reaction to this plan by Israel to take control of Gaza City? What are the implications for your team on the ground?
Well, we know what military expansion and military occupation means for Palestinian children. We have seen military expansions in Gaza over the past 2 years, as well as military occupation, and we know the harm, that children face as a consequence of that. I think what we currently need in Gaza is a definitive ceasefire in place. Children in Gaza have been paying, the highest price for this unrelenting war that they have played no part in. Many children have been killed by bombs and bullets, and at a very unprecedented rate. And children have lost their homes, loved ones, and the safety of which they have a right to. They are dying of hunger and diseases. And the same applies to even my colleagues on the ground here. I think what we actually need more than ever is a definitive ceasefire in Gaza.
You say that children are paying the highest price. Just remind us why it is children, this segment of the population, of which we're seeing some of the worst fatalities. What is it about the population in Gaza?
Yeah, children are particularly vulnerable to the effects of explosive weapons. Their bodies are oftentimes thrown harder and further away by the blast. Their bones, bend more. This also increases the chance of long-term disabilities for children. They have, less blood to give or to lose, and they are very unlikely to see medical or special care given the decimated health systems within Gaza currently. So speaking from that perspective is why I flag children, and working for an organization that is centered around children. We hear the cries of these children. We see the mental, impact of the war on them. We see the level of malnutrition. We see the level of hunger on the ground, and children, once again, are the most impacted.
We're going to stay within the region and speak to our correspondent in Jerusalem, Amir Nada, who joins us now. Amir, I was just referring there to John Donaldson's report, and he'd mentioned how divisive this particular part of the war and the plan by Mr. Netanyahu has been in the country. Just expand that for us, if you could.
Well, in the run-up to the decision, we saw this rare outburst of serving and indeed former security officials, military chiefs, calling on Prime Minister Netanyahu not to make this decision to go into the Gaza city, to conquer it, to force out 1 million Palestinians. We saw them mostly articulate that in the form of the danger that it could pose to hostages. We saw over 500 former security chiefs talk about the damage that it could also cause to Israel's reputation internationally. Opposition leaders have said the same thing, talking about the possibility that Israeli hostages are being held around Gaza City. It's believed that's the case. Their lives could be in danger. We know that Hamas previously has said that should Israeli troops come near to places that Israeli captives are being held, that their captors have been given orders to execute them. Hostage families are, of course, extremely distressed, saying that this plan is essentially a death sentence for their families, for their relatives who remain captive in the Gaza Strip. Then the announcement came yesterday morning, and we saw from the chief of staff of the Israeli military, who had, it was widely known, had been a vocal critic of the plan. We saw him publicly stating that there is now unity with the government. The Israeli military will carry out this plan. They presented this unified front, and we've seen the government really reassert and sort of double down on its language, hardening its language in the face of so much international and indeed domestic criticism, with the Minister of Defence yesterday evening saying that all of this condemnation internally, externally, the threats of sanctions on Israel, none of this will weaken our resolve. So there isn't really any sense that this huge international pressure on Israel and on Prime Minister Netanyahu's government will do anything to shift their thinking over this very dramatic and severe plan that they've announced.
Japan marked the 80th anniversary of the Nagasaki atomic bombing on Saturday, as the country's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba reaffirmed its commitment to a world without nuclear weapons. As the only nation to have suffered atomic bombings in war, he said, it's Japan's duty to uphold the 3 non-nuclear principles and take the lead in international efforts to realise a world without nuclear war or nuclear weapons. After a moment of silence at 11:02 a.m, marking the time of the blast, the city's mayor Shiro Suzuki warned that current global conflicts could push the world again into nuclear war. Large parts of Nagasaki were levelled on August the 9th, 1945, when the US dropped a 10,000-pound plutonium-239 bomb on the city. Out of an estimated 200,000 people living in Nagasaki, 27,000 were killed instantly. Representatives from 95 countries and territories attended the annual ceremony. They included nuclear superpower the United States and Israel, which neither confirms nor denies having nuclear weaponry. Russia, which possesses the world's largest nuclear stockpile, was also in attendance.
In a country already struggling under decades of sanctions, the recent war with Israel has hurt Iranian businesses even more. While some are adapting, others remain on edge. Niman Amdari says his startup company lost 85% of its revenue during the conflict.
This 12 days period of time was kind of a tip of iceberg. After 2 decades, tough sanction and economic recession and, a high level of unemployment in Iran, the economy, even for big and huge business, not just a small and medium one, is very, very fragile.
And this economic concern has forced companies into cost-cutting measures, including layoffs. Negin, herself a former HR manager, was among those laid off.
Witnessing the psychological effects of unemployment on individuals is extremely difficult. In the Middle East, we wake up to a new surprise every day, and we have to try to stay our lives through these events. I hope things return to normal soon and life becomes stable again.
The Iranian government says it's taking actions to help those affected.
Under exceptional wartime conditions, we prioritized business support to ease the financial crisis, mainly by expanding access to capital. For platform-based and online enterprises, we relaxed insurance requirements to reduce pressure. Also, we're boosting sales opportunities, especially for small businesses.
Beyond the job market, Iran faces reconstruction costs. Military and nuclear sites and civilian buildings were damaged across the country. Wartime losses also include airspace closure, disrupted trade and travel, and defense spending. But recovery will be difficult because of a host of existing challenges: water and power shortages, soaring inflation, a weak currency, and strained international trade. The Iran-Israel war has worsened the existing challenges and added pressures to Iran's already strained economy. But despite the damages, efforts to rebuild are underway. It's a moment for the country to push forward, but the road ahead remains clouded by economic uncertainties. Toid Asadi, Al Jazeera, Tehran.
You were listening to the WINN FM 98.9 newscast. Our top stories were: back-to-school savings, discount VAT days, and 0% VAT on school supplies announced. Ministry of Climate Action consultant provides insight into Community Climate Adaptation Fund, empowering local action. U.S. Department of Justice doubles reward for Venezuelan president's apprehension, $50 million. St. Lucia advances HIV prevention, PrEP training for healthcare professionals. Internationally, Ukraine will not give up land, Zelensky says, as Trump plans to meet Putin. Thank you for listening.